Who is widely regarded as a hero, but was actually a terrible person? Kobe Bryant came to post this name. Bryant admitted on record to have choked his victim, and her never consenting to have sex, yet claims it was consensual. Somehow the media and public opinion decided to portray the teenage victim as an antagonist, and once she and her family decided not to testify in the highly publicized case after her name was accidentally leaked, most of the world decided to turn a blind eye and keep him as some sort of hero. He actually wrote a letter as part of the victim's civil settlement. In it, he flat out says he recognizes she didn't consent. The lawyerese in question, "I now understand how she feels that she did not consent to this encounter." Bit of an odd one, but Coco Chanel. Not a hero in the traditional sense, but in fashion history, she was a massive pioneer in bringing more comfortable and less restrictive designs to women. She saw and participated in the change from women having to wear corsets and gowns to being able to wear pants and work clothing, which was a massive thing for feminism. However, she was quite literally a Nazi. Maybe not a hero, but Steve Jobs rightfully gets a lot of praise for saving Apple, but more importantly to most, the invention of the iPhone and ushering in the smartphone era properly, since before that, BlackBerrys were the realm of business folks, where the iPhone was aimed at everyone. I didn't know the part about him cheating someone else out of an organ after his stupid raw fruit diet didn't cure his cancer. If I recall, he had something that was 95% survivable with modern medicine, but decided to spend a year doing something stupid instead. I didn't know he skipped the line at the end, essentially killing someone else. Jobs dying from a totally curable cancer from his own hubris is some Tolkien-esque justice. Reminds me of how Stalin died from a stroke alone in his room because his guards were ordered not to enter. He also always parked in the handicapped parking spot in front of the door at the old Apple HQ, and all the employees referred to that parking space as his. It's not necessarily the worst thing he did, but a good illustration of the type of person he was. He also bought a new car every 6 months so he could avoid ever paying registration. As a billionaire. Steve Jobs' asshole behavior actually eventually resulted in laws being changed. California doesn't allow that license plate loophole anymore, and there were changes to federal law surrounding state registration for organ transplants. I also don't understand why he would make his car more distinctive by it being the only one without a plate. A tiny pause. I still have a challenge from last month for 100 subscribers. Please help me complete it. It really helped me grow and the content will be even better. And you can also like the video. Yes, I'm being a little cheeky. Want to get really controversial? Churchill. Sure, he is a World War II hero in the West, but if you look at what he did in India, he was basically a villain. The Bengal famine of 1943 killed anywhere between 2 and 3 million people, and it wasn't a natural disaster. It should be called forced starvation. British policies under Churchill directly resulted in the deaths. Grain exports kept going out from India. Boats that could have moved food were seized under his denial policy. Requests for relief from India were ignored because ships were being used for Europe. He even blamed Indians breeding like rabbits for the famine instead of changing his policies. Anyway, most heroes from the West during the colonial period don't hold up to scrutiny when you look at what they did in the colonies, and Churchill is up there in the list. He also believed in eugenics and that we should forcibly euthanize people with disabilities. He was vile. It sickens me how revered he is. Henry Ford was a great innovator in manufacturing processes, and he was a great antisemite, racist, KKK affiliate, and general scumbag of a person. Calling him a bigot doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of how bizarre Ford as a person and businessman was. Ford had very strict rules for his workers that extended to their home life, and had an entire 200-person department of the company dedicated to spying on his workers and making sure they were model citizens. They would show up at workers' houses unannounced and interrogate people about their drinking habits and children's schooling. He set up an entire company town in Brazil called Fordlandia, where he essentially tried to recreate small-town America in the middle of the Amazon jungle with zero regard to how different the culture of the natives working for him was. It had worker revolts, pests, and ultimately lost the company millions of dollars. On a lighter but still bad note, he also used his wealth to promote square dancing through community events, schools, and books.
He thought that jazz was a Jewish plot to corrupt the young, so he wanted to encourage more white alternatives. Guy was racist, anti-Semitic, and weird. Steven Tyler from Aerosmith is disgusting. Convinced parents of his underage girlfriend to give him custody so she could tour with him. Gave her drugs and alcohol, pressured her into an abortion. Pedo and disgusting human. A lot of the OG rock stars were fucking children. So gross. There's a chapter in Anthony Kiedis' book where he says he had sex with a 14-year-old girl, found out she was 14, then had sex with her again. Then he wrote a song called Catholic Schoolgirls Rule, and now dates teenagers when he's in his 60s.
Thomas Edison. He's praised as an inventor, but he stole ideas, exploited his workers, and even electrocuted animals in public just to smear Nikola Tesla's name. I loved that tweet that said Elon Musk is the Thomas Edison of our time, and I mean that as a slur. Tom Cruise. 5 minutes of Googling about him and his church will give you shivers, and people praise him for being a great film star who does all his own stunts. He does his own stunts because he thinks space aliens have given him superpowers. Edit. A lot of people are saying that A, Scientology is no more weird than other religions, and B, having weird beliefs doesn't make you bad. Scientology is the only religion that has their scriptures behind a paywall, and as for Cruise, he doesn't allow Nicole Kidman to see their children because she left the church. Katie Holmes had to do a midnight run with their daughter knowing that was the only way she could leave the church and still be allowed contact with their child. Cruise's wedding and his house is staffed by indentured church members who aren't paid and can't leave. His best man is Scientology's Pope David Miscavige. Miscavige's wife, Shelley, has not been seen in public for many years and is believed to be held captive against her will. Cruise is second in command and chief salesman for a religion that regularly separates members from their families and their wallets. Jerry the Mouse. Tom knew when he was trying to end it all. Tom was the hero. They were actually friends. Jerry kept Tom employed as the house cat, and in turn, Tom didn't eat Jerry. Mutually beneficial relationship right there. Douglas MacArthur. Stranded 90K troops in the Philippines, trotted off to get his Medal of Honor for losing an entire country. Shameless liar and glory stealer. And he had a 16-year-old love slave. Not to mention extorted the Philippine president for $500K for safe passage. He took credit for Australian victories in New Guinea. He pushed the North Koreans to the Chinese border, thus extending the war and being responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths. Once he started getting pushback from the Chinese, he refused to believe that there were that many Chinese soldiers, leading to a bunch of military failures that killed thousands of his own troops. When he got promoted into a position where he was no longer in command, he then started shit-talking Truman's foreign policy and military strategy after massively blundering a war they had basically already won, simply for his own ego and future hopes of being president. MacArthur was a half-decent commander during the island hopping campaign, and the Incan landings were brilliant. But he is one of the most over-propagandized generals in history and in no way actually deserve his ranks and positions of authority. Sorry, but John Lennon was a real POS. Wrote Working Class Hero while owning an entire apartment to keep his furs at the perfect temperature. Decried being abandoned by his parents while turning around and doing the same to Julian. Claiming to be a house husband while Sean had a full-time nanny. Even Sean admitted he screamed into his ear so loudly when angry it broke his eardrum. Turned George against Paul, had affairs on both wives. I could go on and on. I love his music though. Imagine no possessions. Arrives in a pink Rolls Royce. General George S. Patton is often praised for his military success, but his record shows serious flaws that undermine his status as a hero. He was known for his arrogance, cruelty, and lack of respect for the soldiers under his command. Patton physically assaulted wounded soldiers suffering from shell shock, calling them cowards, and his obsession with personal glory often put lives at unnecessary risk. His open admiration for authoritarianism and his racist, anti-Semitic remarks further reveal a man whose character falls far short of heroic. A fun fact about Patton is that he believed in reincarnation. He believed that he was a legionnaire in the Roman empires in a previous life. No one has said Isaac Newton yet, so I will. He was an absolute genius, probably one of the, if not the greatest physicists, and also one of the, if not the greatest mathematicians to ever live in one breath. Basically invented the math necessary to invent physics all by himself, then invented Newtonian mechanics, gravitational law, and also contributed to solving many mathematical problems.
Bernoulli once submitted an open problem to the mathematics community that he had spent weeks trying to solve. Eventually, they translated it to English and sent it to Newton after no one successfully solved it, only for Newton to solve it in one afternoon. Bernoulli's solution was more elegant, but the right answer is the right answer. And oh boy, was Newton a terrible person. He only published his work on calculus after Leibniz did so because he didn't want Leibniz to have the credit. Otherwise, he'd have kept it to himself. He had all the paintings of Robert Hooke burnt. Newton had a lot of power at this point, so could do this. To this day, we have no paintings of Hooke. A book on Newton, Dark Side of Newton, also claims he threatened to burn his parents' house down, used counterfeit money, the guy was treasurer of the Royal Mint, he was loaded, and even committed assault. Some guys really need to get laid. He swore off of women so as to not distract himself from his work. I always wonder if he was gay or asexual and just said that so people didn't look down on and shun him as they did everyone who wasn't hetero back then. Of course, we will never know. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give me your precious likes. I really appreciate them. Subscribe and write who is widely regarded as a hero but was actually a terrible person in comments. Talk to you soon.